I have a different mic than everybody else. Oh.
We're all good.
Okay, I would like to call to order this meeting of the Highland Park Board of Education voting workshop meeting. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of the public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, the Highland Park Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting, setting forth the time, date, and location to be submitted for publication to the Home News Tribune and Courier News and posted on the board's website at least 48 hours in advance of this meeting. Members of the public who wish to address the board will be given the opportunity to do so before the board adjourns for the evening.
Dr. Beatty?
Here.
Ms. Cassell Dunn?
Here.
Dr. Coleman? Mr. Maldonado?
Here.
Dr. Pixley?
Here.
Ms. Bruce?
Here.
Dr. Schoolman? Ms. Stanio? Ms. Bardman?
Here. Okay, I now move that we recess to executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now going to reconvene to regular session.
I'm sorry. Dr. Beatty?
Here.
Ms. Cassell Dunn?
Here.
Dr. Coleman? Mr. Maldonado? Dr. Pixley?
Here.
Ms. Bruce?
Here.
Dr. Schoolman? Ms. Stanio? Ms. Bardman?
Here. Okay, now we will do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we had a number of communications since our last meeting, all involving the budget. And now we will approve the minutes. I move we approve the minutes.
Second. Second.
Dr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Cassell Dunn?
Yes.
Dr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Maldonado? Dr. Pixley? Ms. Bruce?
Yes.
Dr. Schoolman?
Yes.
Ms. Stanio?
Yes.
Ms. Bardman?
Yes. Student representatives report.
Starting off with Irving, their students celebrated Poetry Month and hosted their PTO youth book sale, and they'd like to thank families for helping prepare the garden beds and planters that students will eventually fill in. They also celebrated Earth Day with a bee demonstration, recycled crafts, seed planting, and other activities, all sponsored by their green team, and their first graders will visit Turtleback Zoo very soon.
For Bartle, they said Bartle Elementary is proud to be participating in the American Heart Association's Kids Heart Challenge during the month of April. So far, our school community has raised over $1,500 to support heart health and life-saving research. And we're especially proud of the 5 Bartle students who have completed Finn's mission, where they learned the important skill of hands-on only CPR. And it's been great to see our students learning ways that they can make a difference in helping others. The American Heart Association also provides lessons and activities based on health, nutrition, and social emotional learning to the Bartle staff and families.
Middle school, they had their marking period 3 star student breakfast, and we're excited to celebrate Alice Nanda, Zoe Redding, Javier Peleas, Caitlin Chan, Isla Villanova, Rowan Boyd, Hissam Al-Hurabe, Toby Gard, Winnie Wang, Rosa Pearson, and Guillermo Salazar as third marking period star students. The 7th graders took a trip to medieval times and had a great time cheering on their yellow and red knights. They will be recognizing middle school pride this year, the core values they believe help their school and students grow. In April, teachers will nominate teachers, and winning teachers will come down on Fridays and pick a student from one of their classes who demonstrates the core value they were nominated for. The teacher winners last week were Miss Carter, Miss Ailey, Miss Donatov, and Miss Takis. They in turn nominated Wes Gash, Imani Agnew, Mikey Weil-Whiten, Julian Malachi, and Michael Sartani. Congratulations. They also celebrated their Spirit Week, had Adam Sandler Day, Anything But a Backpack Day, Pajama Day, Cowboy/Cowgirl Day, and Color Wars. They celebrated spring sports at the pep rally and had an awesome staff versus students basketball game. Though the students won, there will be a rematch.
And for the high school, Model UN competed in early April in New Brunswick and won Best Large Delegation at Rutgers Model Congress. And Highland Park DECA traveled to ICDC on Friday. About 20 students headed to Atlanta to represent Highland Park in Sales Project, Financial Literacy, Thrive, Aspire, School-Based Enterprise, and role-play events. In addition to working hard, we will be having a little bit of fun at the Georgia Aquarium and World of Coke. These opportunities are only possible due to the hard work of our students and generous donors in the community. This past weekend was also our musical Shrek. It is always incredible to see the talent in our school. We also have a super exciting community event as Joel Waldman, HPHS class of 87, returns to Highland Park High School with his mom to discuss his new book and podcast, Surviving the Survivor. Come join us for this free event at 7 p.m. in the high school auditorium, April 29th.
Thank you. And now we're going to move on to the superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight. I'm excited to start my report by spotlighting two well-deserving Bartle students. So I'd like to invite Miss Jennifer Knapp, principal, up to the podium.
Good evening. I have the pleasure of honoring two of our Bartle Dolphins tonight, Ramona Payne and Eleonora Chu. I'll start with Ramona. I am proud to recognize Ramona for consistently going above and beyond in all areas of learning. Ramona approaches every assignment with focus, determination, and a strong commitment to excellence, often exceeding expectations. In addition to her academic success, she serves as a role model by consistently demonstrating kindness, responsibility, and respect. Whether supporting classmates, staying organized, or showing a positive attitude each day, Ramona truly embodies our school values. We are fortunate to have her as part of our school community. Congratulations, Ramona. Come on up, Ramona. I am also very proud to honor Nora. Nora consistently goes above and beyond, actively seeking out additional challenges and putting forth her best effort on all tasks. She often asks thoughtful questions, volunteers to participate, and takes the initiative to extend her learning beyond what is required. Her enthusiasm for learning is evident in her positive attitude and willingness to take on new and challenging tasks without hesitation. Additionally, she is kind and inclusive, regularly making an effort to ensure all classmates feel welcomed, valued, and supported within the classroom community. Congratulations, Eleonora.
And please join me one more time for congratulating both students. I'm going to move on to the next part of my report, which is the final budget presentation, and then we'll move into the final budget hearing. Those that are here to support our Bartle students, you're more than welcome to stay for the rest of the presentation. However, I know Ms. Knapp and some of our staff have a long day, so if you need to excuse yourself and families to go out and celebrate, please feel free or take some pictures outside. Congratulations again. Thank you. All right, give me one. There we go. Okay. All right. Okay. All right, so I'm going to begin, see if we can focus our attention here, or maybe here. I'll figure out how to set this up. Okay, for our final budget presentation. There we go. Okay. All right. Okay. All right, so I'm going to breeze through the first couple of slides. This is all a repeat from the tentative budget, but just a couple of reminders if you weren't watching the tentative budget back in March. But every year we align our budget process with district goals and objectives, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, the Every Student Succeeds Act, and the New Jersey Student Learning Standards. In addition, this process for budgeting takes quite a long time. So as we discussed in the tentative budget, all of our administrators meet with myself and Mr. Rosa starting in the fall. Typically, they start building their budgets around October, November. By December, they're meeting with us and going through their budget requests. And we do that for about a month or two. And typically during that process, we're able to kind of fine tune the budget as we go, kind of build it as a larger budget by looking at how we can pay for different things, or the different funding options, things like that. The Finance and Facilities, which is a subcommittee of the Board of Education, meets with the department administrators every year, and this year it was February 10th. And then we've had subsequent many meetings with the Finance and Facilities Committee, as you can see here, to actually talk about it, because it was definitely a more challenging budget season. And then we had board discussions on publicly March 23rd, April 13th, and then tonight, the 27th. And I'm going to reiterate again, I know we've talked about this, but our 3 levels of budgeting. So we're required to budget things legally. So there's legal requirements that happen. That's a level 1 budgeted item. Those items cannot be cut. That include anything around the New Jersey Student Learning Standards or special education, are just some examples. Level 2 are required by board policy. And then level 3 are not required, but a high investment from our community. So things like our music program, arts, mental health, things like that, that are high priority, we like to include as a level 3 budgeted item. So a couple of things with our budget in this particular budget was our fiscal responsibility. So some of the issues that we were facing this year with our budget was continued increased costs for students with disabilities that has required additional and shift in our staffing needs. So what you'll actually see in the subsequent finance slides is we're bringing some more students back in district, which is wonderful because we want our Highland Park students being educated with their peers in district. But you'll see that there was a shift. That number has gone down, but educating students in our district that have a variety of needs has gone up a little bit for that. Facility maintenance, so that's something that is ongoing. We want to make sure that we're always addressing facility needs. That's really important. Federal and state mandates that come at us, we have to make sure we budget for those. There are contracted obligations that the Board of Education is responsible for those fiscal responsibilities. In addition, we're always looking for ways to save money. So we have lots of conversations, a lot of data that has been presented to the Board of Education. I do require a lot of my leadership team to bring information to me as well, so we can make informed decisions that include staffing, student enrollment, our student needs, and anything that could be a least impact on student achievement. So as we're looking through the data, that's the lens that we're looking through. So in terms of our budget impact, one of the key drivers that I know we've been talking about for at least 2 months now or a month and a half has been the health benefits. So you'll see in subsequent slides, Highland Park, like many other districts, in fact, probably most districts in the state of New Jersey, are really being impacted by the increase in health benefits. And when we show you those slides, you'll actually see that as the major driver for our budget this year. The preliminary budget projection back in March on the 23rd had us at an increase of 32% for our health benefits. And as we noted in the April 13th special board meeting, we were able to, our brokers from Brown & Brown were able to get that number down for us, which was a really big deal. So that would then give us a final budget that includes an increase of 26.1% to health benefits, which is a $1.18 million increase to the overall operating budget. So that is the impact health benefits has on a $44 million budget in Highland Park. And the two factors around that are the medical loss ratio, which is at 94%, and more significantly, the prescription loss ratio, which is at 211%. So those are pretty significant, in particular, the prescription loss ratio. The state does allow us to increase the tax levy above 2% for increase in health benefits. So that means, according to where we stand in our budget and with the specific information around Highland Park, that's a little over $1.1 million or $1.068 million, which would equate to a 5.1% increase in tax levy. Our final budget includes approximately $605,000 of that, of the $1 million, creating bank cap of about $462,000, which can be used over the next 3 years. So what I presented tonight for a final budget shows a happy medium of the two. So instead of cutting all of the staff that was proposed in the tentative budget, my proposed budget tonight is a middle ground where we will save some of the staff. Unfortunately, we will have to cut a couple. And instead of raising the taxes to the full 5.18%, we will do 3.8%. So that therefore we're somewhere in between to be fiscally responsible. Part of that allows us to get banked cap to be used for future budgets. So a part of what the planning and my thought process was how do we set ourselves up for future success? A lot of the issues that we're having around health benefits comes with Chapter 44 legislation around the health benefits for public school employees. That doesn't sunset until 2028. So my concern, if I'm thinking about the future, I don't know what the school funding formula is going to hold for the future. We have a new governor who's proposing a new formula, but nobody knows what that is yet. So my concern is in the next couple of years, with an unknown amount of state aid that we could get, plus this legislation around Chapter 44 does not sunset for another couple of years. How do I set the district up for financial success so that we're not constantly raising taxes a significant amount year after year? So this gave us two things happen. One was going to a GLP-1 direct to take the two expensive drugs that were part of the prescription loss ratio of 211% out of our overall benefit plan and administer it in a way that is slightly different, but still access is still the same. So part of it was taking those two high cost prescriptions out and administering them just slightly different. So hopefully next year our loss ratio won't be as bad. And so maybe something like 32% won't happen. In years past, we've been up like 14%. So that is one hope of that piece. And the other is having some bank cap. By not going to the full 5% this year, that does give us $462,000 in bank cap to use over the next couple of years as well. So my hope in proposing this budget is I'm looking for next year, but I also need to look in a couple of years to make sure that we are fiscally responsible to the taxpayers in Highland Park without compromising student achievement in the district. So like I said in the tentative budget, the budget does enable the district to maintain fully staffed schools with qualified personnel, great instructional resources, updated and aligned to standards. In particular, the state is putting out updates for ELA, math, science, and multi-language learners. And in addition, it does include courtesy transportation for students on hazardous routes. In addition, the budget will include some facility improvements, the repairs to the high school cupola. For those who don't know, the high school is almost 100 years old. In 2026, it will be 100 years old for the major part of the building. The high school cupola is the square piece in the front. When it was built over 100 years ago, or just about 100 years ago, the gutters were built inside of in between the building. Like the gutters now are on the outside of buildings. 100 years ago, that's not how they built the buildings. And that's what we're actually finding. It's not roof leaks that are a problem. It's the cupola and these like internal gutters that are just wreaking havoc. If you've ever been in the main office, you can see some of the result of that on the second floor. So that's an area that definitely needs to be addressed. It's an area of repair, replacement of water service line at the high school, replacement of Bartle fire alarms and strobes, the Bartle boilers, replacement of exterior lights at all schools, and an increase of 2 additional security cameras at each school. In addition, what we didn't put on there for the security is the majority of the money being used for the camera upgrade actually comes for a new server. The cameras, the technology can only hold so much of that camera footage. The server that we have is outdated and it's becoming problematic. So with the change in the technology times for the cameras, we do have to upgrade the server. So the majority of that money is actually being used for the server to upgrade the system. We will be increasing preschool enrollment by 15 students, which I want to celebrate and think that's absolutely amazing, especially since word on the street is a neighboring district is not even going to be offering it anymore or being able to afford to. So I'm really proud of the work that my staff at Irving do to continue that work. In addition, we will be supporting a new math curriculum or resource for grades K through 5 coming soon next month. We're almost about done wrapping that up and making a recommendation to the board for a new math curriculum. So we're really excited about those things. But unfortunately, there are a couple of areas in which we will have to cut in order to make all of that happen. So I'm proposing the reduction in force. So they're not it's not being necessarily fired, it's not non-renewed, it's a reduction in force. So these staff members that will be cut have right of refusal for any jobs that are open under their certifications or their current job descriptions if and when they become available. So that's 2 assistant administrative assistants. I am recommending that we close the makerspace at the middle school and 1 secondary social studies teacher, which will result in no diminishment of instruction or services to students. So all of our programs for social studies will be staffed, electives at the high school will be running, and we will see no impact on that. In addition, we talked about at the April 13th board meeting about the aid in lieu. Another area that we found in cost savings was aid in lieu of transportation. Mr. Rosa?
Yes, so this one. So based on the clarifications and the directives provided by the Department of Education, the district does not have the authority to make non-public aid in lieu payments. Because we don't transport any of our public school students because they live remotely, that does not require us or give us the authority to make those payments to those non-public students. In the original budget update of March of April 13th, I projected a cost of $225,000. I picked up the wrong number. We do have to cover aid in lieu for charter school students. That's mandated transportation. So charter schools are classified as specialized programs, and transportation is provided in accordance with New Jersey Administrative Code 6A 27-3.1. which states the maximum allowable expenditure of transportation for those students cannot cost more than today $1,177 per student. So we only have about 15 students that go to charter schools, so that would they qualify for aid in lieu instead of offering a bus that would cost $30,000.
Okay. Oh, do I miss a slide or are we? Okay, no. All right, so we'll go through again. So this is going to be the snapshot of our revenues with the 3.8% tax increase that I'm proposing tonight.
Right, so just going over the revenue snapshot, the tax levy is increasing the 2%, plus, as Dr. Siska mentioned, the $605,000 of the healthcare cost adjustment. Our state aid did increase 6%. We are estimating a decrease in extraordinary aid for the 26-27 school year. We won't know that 26-27 number until July of 2027, once the application is submitted. Applications are submitted at the end of May. The state calculates them and they determine how much is refunded back. The amount of that reimbursement by the state is not statutory, so that derivative is changes. Every year, we noticed over the past 3 years, the amount that they're funding back in excess has decreased. We also are projecting a little bit of an increase for other local sources and interests. This includes our interest income, tuition. We have some parent-paid tuition students. We have another student from another LEA that attends our specialized program. It also includes the borough's pilot money share, our enterprise activities, and refunds of prior year expenditures. Federal aid or SEMI, is an amount determined by the state. So the state tells us how much to budget for SEMI reimbursement. And our subtotal for operating revenue only, so just our operating revenue is actually increasing 3.63% over last year. And just to highlight our non-recurring revenue that support operating expenses. So we utilize some capital reserve to take care of those long-range facility projects that Dr. Suska mentioned, the cupola, the fire alarm, exterior lights, Bartle boilers, and the water service line. So if you know, last year, our utilization was 2.2 million. That was directly related to our Bartle structural repair project. We don't have that next year. We paid for it. So that's why that number has decreased, negative 1.5 million. We're utilizing $250,000 of our maintenance reserve and about $131,000 of emergency reserve. And we're projecting some surplus. Our total budget, operating budget, is $44,604,243. It represents a decrease from the prior year of about 0.5%.
Excellent. So what you can see here are continue with our proposed expenditures. What we want to do, just so that we don't have to, kind of go through it all like we did for the tentative budget, but a couple of areas to highlight that we'll discuss. So one area where you see a lot of these numbers fluctuated because we added back in the staff that were originally slated for reductions in force from the tentative budget. So that's why you'll see these numbers are changing, because we added those positions back into the budget. So you can see that for total supplemental at-risk instruction, that was a change.
That's an increase because we added back in an interventionist. The other highlighted amounts, the attendance would represent the central registration secretary along with the nurse. And the improvement of instruction staff media services is the media center specialist. The school district central IT is an administrative assistant. The student transportation services actually went down. That reflects that non-public aid in lieu. And the capital outlay, employee benefits went down as well, and that results to the savings that we're achieving by our renewal. It's just a little bit off because we have to account for the positions that we're putting back into the budget. We need to budget the cost of the district's portion. So overall, the tax impact on a 3.8% school year tax levy for the average home assessed value at $482,000, it would be $317.77 per year, or $26.48 per month. I just want to call to attention that a school district's budget runs from July to June. Your property taxes are from January to December. So, and it all fluctuates. So you might not see a direct 3.8% starting in your third quarter taxes. It kind of levels out.
So typically you might see that around Q1 of 2027 and beyond. All right, so that concludes our formal presentation. What I'm going to do is open it up for questions or comments from the Board of Education. Once that's done, I will close my report and we can move on to the hearing of the budget. So any questions from the Board of Education right now?
Yes, Denise, you said the extraordinary aid, but it will be July of this year we find out, correct?
So we find out what we projected for
Okay.
25-26 in July 2026.
Okay, good.
And the amount we're projecting for
For next
26,
year is
27,
27?
we'll find out in July of 2027.
Got it.
So it always happens July after the school year ends. The application is due in May, the state reviews it, and then we get the money in July.
All right, thank you.
Are you projecting that that aid is going to go down just because that's been the trend, or because we're bringing students back into district?
It's a combination. So I tend to look at all the factors. So I do an analysis of how many in-district students we have, how many out-of-district students we have. There is a threshold that the state has on the extraordinary aid application. So in-district students, if it costs a district over $40,000, then you're eligible to submit them on an application for the amount above $40,000. If for a student that goes out of district, the threshold is $55,000. If it costs us over $55,000 to send that student out of district, that portion above $55,000 can be reported on the application. And then the state does a calculation and reimburses a portion of that excess.
Regarding one high school teacher moving down to middle school, would this affect any of the course offerings at the high school?
Nope, it does not affect any course offerings. We're able to offer all the courses and electives, and I believe there was a new course added with electives that we're able to fully run as well. So there is no impact on student instruction.
Could you explain how that's the case?
I'm sorry, could you say that?
Could you explain, why you're confident that despite a reduction in force of one social studies teacher, there won't be a change in the courses that are being offered, essentially? Why is that the case?
So we had a member of the social studies department that was our athletic coordinator over the past number of years who had a reduction in teaching load as a result of working in that capacity. So they were like a shared capacity. So what we found this year in moving that staff member fully back as a full-time secondary social studies teacher, that it actually, we had an area where it was without impacting students, still able to run same courses, same course load, no increase on student to staff ratio in those classes, that we were able to do that successfully because we had that extra person back in that department. You're welcome.
Since you're also talked about removing the makerspace from the middle school, would that also affect like the student to teacher ratio or not?
So it doesn't. This instead of running concurrently with art makerspace, it will be theater. So we have last year, if you saw on the board agenda, we approved from a part-time theater to a full-time theater teacher, and so we are going to run theater concurrently with art. So the students will have options for theater, which will be fantastic. And if anybody saw the musical this weekend, we're really excited to be able to offer that. Absolutely.
Hello. So with the banked capital, does that also give us a better chance of not having to reduce force in the future years? Does it give us like a little bit of a cushion for that so we can keep people?
Yeah, so that is our hope. So the two things again that I hope in doing this and proposing this budget, well, let me say three. So one is, yes, that banked cap of $462,917 is available for us over the next 3 years. So again, with unknown of what the state funding formula is going to look like, we are below adequacy. So I want to make sure that we have a cushion for whatever that formula is going to be, plus the continued rise in health benefits. But I'm hoping removing the too expensive GLP-1 drugs in a more direct route, staff still have access, and their the people that use the insurance still have access. It's just in a different administration way. The hope is those two things mitigate the issue for next year, but this bank cap will be able to help us mitigate that. If we go to the full 5.18%, we won't have that bank cap. And so if things get dire as they are projecting, then we're still in the position. If you remember last year at the tentative budget, there were a number of staff that were in our tentative budget last year to be reduced in force, the same staff. We did the tax levy incentive aid. If you remember from last year, we had a special board meeting to approve the tax levy incentive aid package, which was the governor's response and legislation to the funding. So they incentivized school districts to do that. We took advantage of it. So we raised taxes last year by 6% to save those positions. Unfortunately, we're in the same position this year. So I'm trying to set us up for success. Or hopefully more success next year with that banked cap and removing the expensive GLP-1s and just administering them in a different way. So again, access is still there. Our staff and the users of the benefits still have access to those GLP-1 drugs for weight loss. It's just administered in a different way, which will help mitigate our prescription loss ratio to hopefully make us more marketable to a company next year. So all of those pieces were used to inform the budget that I'm proposing. I will say it was not an easy decision, contrary to what people might think. It was very, very hard, a lot of data. And then we went back and forth a lot in trying to figure out how to make this work. These are really unfortunate times. I will say that with over 60% of our families on free and reduced lunch, and we continue to put the burden on taxpayers, it is very challenging. So that is why my proposed budget tonight, to me, meets somewhere in the middle where we're able to save some of the positions and we're still increasing taxes. But again, looking at our overall number of the increase, that can still be a considerable amount for some of our families that are trying to get by, and an extra $26.48 a month, and then not knowing what the future holds for next year. I don't want to see that number again. So my hope is with not going to the full amount, will set us up for better success next year.
Just want to clarify with the banked cap, what that means is say next year, that's taxes that we didn't raise, but we have 3 years where we could raise those taxes over the 2% cap.
Correct.
So there's a 2% cap of how much we can raise property taxes. However, healthcare benefits are not included in that. So you can go over the 2% cap in order to pay for health benefits. That's why we were able to, that's why we're going over the cap this year. But that would leave us 3 years
of no cap
to maybe be able to, if our healthcare system, if our healthcare dollars are better next year, right? If we're not getting hit with a 26% increase, we would not have the ability to go over the 2% cap.
Right. So if our health insurance costs don't go up next year, but something else goes down, we have the flexibility to raise taxes a little bit that we wouldn't have if we take advantage of the full levy this time.
That's correct.
No, I understand.
And if you remember, a couple of years ago, we actually received a little over $1 million in state aid. This was a couple of years ago, and it was phenomenal. We were able to add some positions in. So again, I don't know what the school funding formula has to offer us with new administration down in Trenton. My hope is that maybe if it comes and it shows that we're not receiving as much as we should be, and maybe there's some sort of increase next year, bringing some positions back and maybe mitigating some of the loss ratio around here. But I don't know what the future holds, other than I just want to make sure that we're set up for fiscal success. Knowing the actual known is Chapter 44. I know what Chapter 44 says around health benefits for state public school employees, and I know that sunsets in 2028, right? So that's something that's a known. Everything else seems to be unknown, and that's a big concern.
Well, and that's just something else I'd also like to clarify around the state aid. State aid increases were limited to 6% this year. If we'd gotten the full amount of state aid that the state calculated we should be getting, we basically wouldn't be in the situation at all. That would have been an extra $700,000.
Correct.
But because they've capped the amount that you could get, it's an increase in aid, but it's less than it should have been.
Correct.
I didn't expect a windfall from the state next year. My understanding is that next year is going to be a rough year budget-wise at the state level. And to the extent that the that policymakers in Trenton are going to look to recalculate or redesign the school funding formula. I would guess that it is not going to be recalculated with an increase to districts of our size in mind. I think there's going to be a movement towards consolidation and regionalization, or at least an attempt to move in that direction. So I think it's prudent to save some spending capacity for a rainy day, because next year might be the rainy day.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's also important to think about last year where they tried to take away more money, but were capped at 3%. So we would have seen a huge reduction last year. It's just really hard to predict, except to know that healthcare costs will be continue to go up. And so, knowing that, planning for that. But the state aid has been really unpredictable from year to year. The fact that we were going to be taking a large chunk of money and they were capped that. This year we were on par for getting a lot of money, and then that was capped. So it's been really hard. No one really knows the algorithm for the state aid, which makes budgeting for it very difficult, impossible. So I think it's just something to keep in mind.
Dr. Zaska, I wanted to ask a little bit about I'm sorry, I just lost my screen. The instructional resources and like the expenditures in all those areas, I think with the exception of special education, are decreasing quite significantly. And I'm wondering if you can just sort of talk about the impact, what that really means in terms of where we're going to see and feel that the most, what you're anticipating there, because that was what was glaring to me. I know we have to balance the budget, but I do want us to just recognize that these key areas of instruction, particularly looking at bilingual education, are going to experience a decrease. I just want to hear a little bit more about administration's thoughts around addressing these changes.
So the regular program instruction is based on a variety of things. It's teacher salaries. So we had some significant retirements last year, so it could be breakage for this year for the new teachers that were hired. All of our supplies are based on per student enrollment. We give them a number to spend per student, with exception at the high school because they have a lot of co-curricular activities. So there's additional supplies needed there, and they also have a large graduation. But just looking at it, a negative 1.78 probably is a combination of we don't have a lot of curriculum writing included. Last year we had curriculum. It could be breakage of teachers. It could be a variety of different things. Nothing that's standing out to me.
Good. I think it's just important to kind of make that clear too, so that we're understanding what that means.
Right.
Right. So it may look different every year when we do the budgeting process, what kind of instructional impact really means. But I think understanding the variables is really important.
Yeah, we discussed how we've been investing in our ELA programs for quite some time. So sometimes you'll see things kind of increase in the budget for a while and then decrease. And it's because of that return on investment where you don't need to continue to purchase new materials or provide, writing brand new curricula. What we'll see now, which we talked about, is that increase in the math, like the STEM area. And that's for that K-5 and more, I think, curriculum writing in some of our science classes and our math classes. So we'll kind of see that shift. And then, hopefully in a few years that will kind of, peter off too.
Yeah, and Ms. Rodriguez and Ms. Saka have done a fantastic job of staying ahead of where the DOE has suggested. So I think in an earlier slide, I said maintaining for very particular programs. So those are when updates for usually a 3 to 5 year a rollout at the state. So every couple of years they revamp or make changes to the state standards. So Ms. Saka and Ms. Rodriguez have done an exceptional job of staying at top of that, which is why over the past couple of years we've approved a lot of curriculum writing. So we're actually ahead of that. So that's why you'll see again some of that number drop. And when we looked at their budgets, we're like, you don't need any more curriculum writing. What happened to curriculum writing? And and we're in excellent shape in terms of making sure that our students are where they need to be at for the New Jersey Student Learning Standards, because we kind of get a little heads up. So our contacts from the state let us know that this is coming, or you have 2 years, and we try to stay up ahead of that. And I'm glad we do, because it kind of helps in a tighter budget season. And then, did you want to speak to the bilingual education? I don't know, because I know that was another one. Yes, because that one has a change
Yeah,
of minus
so,
14%.
I did look at this because this was glaring out to me. So when the budget was snapshotted last year, we had 2 people in the same position. One was retiring and one was coming in, and the budget took that snapshot. So there is no reduction to the number of teachers that's been servicing our students. It's the same. Our numbers are just, a $56,000 negative throws off it by 14.73%. Our numbers are small in comparison, but throw it off because of the total dollar amount. And I think you spoke about special ed. Did you ask?
Well, just that was the category where we saw the increase out of all the instructional categories, I believe, which
Right.
no need to get into that. I understand,
Okay.
but I just wanted to just get some understanding and make sure everyone's there's layers to understanding what that we talk about instruction. There are many factors involved. So thank you. No, difficult to kind of accept the reality of where we are and the decisions that had to be made. So thank you.
And quite honestly, we're here now because of the change that the HPA supported the board to make, which was transitioning out of the state health benefits 3 years ago.
Yes,
Many other districts have been here already years ago. It just took us a little longer to get here. And it's something that we could not control, but it was that collaboration to move away from the state health benefits that allowed us to mitigate some of these hard decisions.
Yeah, because I believe the state benefit plan went up over 50% or thereabout.
I think it's like 33%.
Yeah.
And they're projecting another 30% increase for January 1st.
Yeah.
So it's really
So
hard to
almost 60.
budget when you're dealing with 30% increases.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, that's something else where, I don't think anyone here is happy about this at all. However, when you look at what's going on in some other districts, Edison is proposing a 6% tax increase, cutting 80 staff members, cutting pre-K entirely, cutting transportation, cutting field trips, not doing facility upgrades. It's bad out there.
Okay, there's no other comments or questions from the board. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay, so now we will start the formal public hearing and board adoption of the 2026-2027 school district budget. If you go through here, it's outlined what Dr. Siska just and Mr. Rosa presented with the positions that are being added back into the budget. The money that's coming out that wasn't in the preliminary budget with the aid in lieu and the reduction of the health benefits for the renewal contracts. Along with taxes to be raised, anticipated revenues, and withdrawal from capital reserve for facility projects. And then we're going to move on to the public comment section of the evening. This is a public comment dedicated solely to the budget. So any comments, please keep them focused on the budget. If there are other concerns, there will be a second public comment period after committee reports. And we'll prioritize the people here in person. If you'd like to speak, please sign in and give your name and address. Unless you're a student, you don't need to give your address.
I just want to kind of talk a little bit about how I really do appreciate this kind of in-between space, how trying to make sure that there's actually specialists and there's a tax that matches everybody's budget. I really appreciate the thought process that went into that. But something that I don't think was really touched upon was the elimination of the Makerspace program. And while I know it's kind of controversial to students specifically in middle school, I think it's a program that grants so much learning that doesn't pertain specifically to something that theater or the arts could. I mean, it teaches students how to actually learn how to type, something that we're not taught in any other space. It teaches students how to be kind, how to be upstanders. I mean, in the halls, if you walk through this school, this middle school, you'll see posters all around that talk about how you should be an upstander, how you should be a good citizen. And while I understand that it's necessary for cuts to be made because there's things that the school has to live up to and, you know, standards that our town has, I think it's really important that we have either this program implemented into other programs or somehow reworking it so that these specific programs still stay. I know that it's not as popular as I mentioned. I don't necessarily have a statistic, but I know not everybody loves the program. But I do know that it's something that's incredibly important to how kids learn and to how they should be outside of the classroom. I think a lot of classes, the core classes, focus on creativity and all of that stuff inside the classroom. But I think this is one of the main programs that focuses outside of the classroom. So finding a space where this cut program can actually live, a curriculum in which it can live inside, I think is incredibly important and is something that should be mentioned. But again, I want to thank you for that middle ground. I think it really does help to see some in between. I know some people really don't want anything cut and some people don't want taxes raised. So I think this is a good in between. But again, I think Makerspace is a program that helps kids learn. It helps kids be a productive adult for when they get into high school, when they graduate high school and onwards.
Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Rob Scott. I'm at 25 South 2nd Avenue here in Highland Park. So the theme of my comments is the unanswered questions. I was here 2 weeks ago. I asked some questions. Other people asked questions. Many people spoke. Everyone who spoke said make no cuts. Nobody said they were worried about their taxes. The anti-tax caucus did not show up. But here we have a kind of what feels, I have to be honest, like a bit of a theatrical production. So a few key observations. I pointed out last time that the amount in the tentative budget that was to be spent is less than is being spent this year. Okay, a sure sign of a kind of austerity. This new budget spends even less. The tax cut proposed is less than the tax proposed is less than the tax that was proposed in the tentative budget. Not by very much. Okay, the kind of dollars we're talking about for the taxpayer remains, as I said before, about the cost of 1 cup of coffee at Dunkin' Donuts every month. I was tempted to bring you all a cup of coffee from Dunkin' Donuts. Okay, that's what we're talking about. And on the other side of it, we're talking a reduction in force. Superintendent Suska, why don't you respect the labor of secretaries? Is it not important? Do they do nothing? What will happen? Who will do the tasks that they're doing now? Okay, I think that's a question that has to be answered. We also need to answer the question of how do you cut a social studies teacher and everything is fine? Class sizes change, offerings change. And that's a person, an actual human being. I mean, reduction in force or RIF is a nice thing to say, but let's be real. Sometimes we call those layoffs, but what that feels like to the person who gets it is they're fired. They don't have a job. They can't support their family. Is that social studies teacher doing nothing? No, class sizes are going to go up, flexibility will go down, and it will hurt the schools. That social studies teacher, if you keep them, is also planning for the future. This whole thing about, oh, we need to bank the tax cut for the future, that's new at this meeting. If you just raised it now, that money will exist in next year's budget and the budget after that as well, right? So there's no need for this theatrical sort of kabuki about, oh, we're so financially responsible, pat ourselves on the back because we're saving the cap, okay? We're talking about tiny, tiny changes around the edge, but we are going full bore on 2 secretaries are fired, a social studies teacher is fired, right? They're not coming back. It creates holes in the school. You're cutting makerspace. And glibly, we heard, oh, it's no problem because art and theater will now be scheduled at the same time. That killed me, right? Because my kids weren't makerspace kids, but they were art and theater kids. And already it was a problem to do theater and band, nearly impossible, right? So all of these changes, all these austerity measures actually impact our schools. And what we hear here is not about those actual impacts. So I have some questions. How much does makerspace cost? We asked that last time. We haven't been told. How much does it cost? Is it $10,000, $100,000? How much does makerspace cost? What would it take to save makerspace? I saw on the agenda how much a secretary costs, 50 grand or 70 grand. Horrifying in and of itself, right? That somebody is trying to make ends meet on that particular salary, okay? There is $113,000 in the savings that was found because we discovered we were breaking the law, right? That is not being spent. That 113 certainly would save a social studies teacher, would likely save 2 secretaries, right? The idea that they're being restored is kind of absurd because they're here working at the school now. They haven't gone away. This is a bit of a theatrical production. So we can say something like, we didn't raise taxes very much. Well, the reality is if you just go with the original 4.11, or you go to the whole cap, the impact on my taxes and the taxes of folks in this town of that difference, of the choice that's actually before us, will be very, very, I'll say very again, small, right? So I would ask the board to not vote 9-0, like you're part of the Borg on Star Trek where resistance is futile and you all have to do the same thing, but to consider the possibility that we need to know how much makerspace costs. How much would it cost to save those to keep those secretaries? To respect the labor they're doing now, right? And I think that's the kind of choice that is before us, and it is really, really out of step in this town for a board of our friends and neighbors who in other contexts we get together and we say, yeah, taxes are a good thing. That's why we have a society, right? That's why the schools are good. Yeah.
How much time are we allowed?
Yeah, am I going on too long?
Is there a time limit on this? Is there normally one?
Look, I'll wrap up, okay? But we need to know the further proposed cuts. How much does each one of them cost? What would it take in real terms to not make those cuts? And what would that mean, right? I think we are owed that. And also this notion of privileging the people who are in the room first, I think is kind of a little bit ridiculous. There are people who are at home on Zoom who are watching this, and they're doing that. Like, I don't have kids in the school. I'm a taxpayer, right? My kids are gone. But people with kids, it's harder to get here, and they're on Zoom, and they should be able to speak, not at the end when everyone's tired, but we should go back and forth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Buffy Wall Greenberg, 60 North 7th Avenue. I just want to ask the board to vote no. We talk a lot about accountability. We teach our kids to be accountable. We teach ourselves to be accountable. And what I've heard tonight is that this board and Dr. Siska are taking no accountability for presenting us with an austerity budget that I'm hearing basically these, neoliberal / MAGA talking points about not raising taxes. And look what they're doing in Edison. It could be so much worse there. So is that what we're doing? It's a race to the bottom, right? The fact is, we don't have a budget crisis. This is always the dangerous thing when people propose cuts, whether it's the federal government, the state, or all of you, is people start to believe there's a budget crisis and it's inevitable and we have to make hard decisions. That's actually not what's happening here. What we have is misplaced priorities. We can raise taxes up to the maximum amount, right? You're choosing not to because you would rather spend money on surveillance cameras. You would rather hire a sports administrator for $100,000. You would rather extend the superintendent's contract who is earning, let's see, I'm really bad at math, about $200,000, and one of the secretaries that we're quote unquote reinstating makes about $55,000. So other people can do the math with that, right? So you're making those choices. You're making the choice to prioritize these high paid administrators, buying more surveillance cameras as if anyone wants that, or as if that reflects our values, right? You're doing that instead of keeping secretaries who are essential staff. They help make our school run. They are the ones that the kids see first thing in the morning. And I really do wish that more people were here tonight, and hopefully they're on Zoom to speak up for them. They're not expendable. And so just to close, if you want to vote for this budget, I hope you will at least take accountability and stop making excuses and stop putting it on the state or Edison or whoever you want to. We don't have a budget crisis. You're choosing to cut secretaries, to cut teachers, so you can spend money on other things that I don't think are very valuable. Thank you.
Good evening, Andy Zappo, 131 Johnson Street. I'm coming here mostly to speak about the sad loss of a social studies teacher in a world where we're losing track of our civic responsibility, where those are the people who create citizens, who create people who are willing to stand up for what is right. ELA, math, we all need those, but social studies is the foundation of what this country and how it even came about. So let's not lose that. Second, the makerspace teacher. I might embarrass him a little if he's watching. I know some of his classmates are here, but my youngest son came to this school out of 5th grade with no confidence in his ability to do anything in school. That might be an exaggeration on my part, but that's how it felt being his dad. And makerspace is where he found confidence. That's where he found confidence that he didn't have. He had to get a leg up on math. He had to get a leg up on ELA. But makerspace was something he could kind of deal with. And I think it really helped him grow his confidence in other courses. We don't all fit in the same mold. I'm not an academic. There's a lot of academics in this room. I'm a technical person. I took my history degree and I use it in a technical world. Why did I take history? Because I was good at it, because I could get good grades in college with it. But I was always dealing with computers. There's not one way to a course in life. And finally, if I heard right during this budget presentation, you were able to retain 2 of the admin assistants, which is great. But it didn't sound to me like they were children facing. It sounded like one was for the business office and one was for the IT department. Those are not going to help the kids in this district at all. They're not going to be the ones who meet them at the bus, who get them their lunch when it gets left by at home in their coats, all that stuff, talking to parents. They're going to help people like me or disorganized IT people. They're going to help disorganized administrators at the top level who earn way too much. So please clarify that point, because it sounded to me like you saved the wrong people. Thank you.
Dr. Suska, I see you have the Shrek musical t-shirt or I hope you enjoyed it because I was there in the pit playing percussion and I helped put that on. And that being said, I find it ridiculous that we are prioritizing theater over makerspace. I am very fond of the arts. My girlfriend is very big into drama and dance. I love percussion with all my heart. I love languages. But I think we need to check our priorities and see what courses are the most important for students to have. Because in the middle school, I don't see anything else that can come close to replacing the hole that Makerspace would leave. It is a vital class for students to have, to be able to know how to navigate the web, to know how to communicate on the web, to know how to be respectful citizens on the web. This is something that is our future, especially with AI. It is incredibly important that these students have access to a course that is specifically tailored to these 21st century problems. So I would just like to really emphasize the importance that we should be having on the Makerspace program. Additionally, earlier it was mentioned that this cut in a social studies teacher would have no impact on students. But with all respect, Dr. Suska, you are not a student and you are not in those classrooms. And currently I'm taking AP US history and I have it with Dr. Gold. And my class has 30 students, which is not an ideal class size for him, for me, or for any other student in that classroom. And so we are going to see class sizes go up. And we're going to lose a teacher that is vital to us. All my history teachers that I've had have been amazing. They have been core pillars in my education. And I am enraged that I'm not going to get to see one of them next year because I value all of them. Even the ones I haven't had Mr. Gervin yet, but I've heard nothing but compliments and praise on his behalf. And even in the hallways, he will smile and wave to me, and he doesn't know who I am. He is an amazing person, an amazing teacher, and all of them are. And I think that in itself is already a huge loss for students. Losing someone that they have, been with for years, that's always going to be a loss, aside from all the other technical aspects of it. And the final thing I would like to emphasize is something that I think has been forgotten, or at least it feels like it's been forgotten, and that's the cutting of the Mandarin program. I'm really pissed off about that because I take Spanish. I'm in Spanish 5 honors right now. And the cut hasn't affected me personally at all. My courses have stayed the same. I am with the same group of students. I've been since freshman year. Believe that it is important that language is prioritized in our communities, especially when we're spending what looks like to me $850,000 on sports. That is my main issue. Because when we talk about sports, they are student athletes, and the student comes first. That's everything I was told from my own coaches, that you are students before you are athletes, and that your academics come first. And so I think the fact that we're cutting languages to $300K, we're cutting $50K from languages, $350 to $300, and we're bumping our sports $800 to $850K, that's ridiculous to me. I think, aside from the fact that it's just a huge blow to these students who were taking Mandarin and all of a sudden they lose access to this course, that's a huge blow to their academics and to their school career. And I get that there was something in place to help these students get Mandarin instruction outside of Highland Park High School. That's not the same thing. It never is. Language is something that you have to immerse yourself in to effectively learn, and they can't immerse themselves in it anymore. Any student who is just as passionate about Mandarin as I am with Spanish, there's a good chance that passion was absolutely cut and slaughtered because that program was cut in favor of sports. And so I find that absolutely disgusting. I think it's a betrayal of what Highland Park stands for, a community that is very strong with our academics, very strong with our humanities. And I think that this should be something that should be 100% reconsidered. And I press you all to bring that program back.
You.
Yeah, I want to talk about how ridiculous I think the cutting of a social studies teacher is, especially because I have Mr. Gervin as a teacher. He teaches AP Gov with AP Government for me. I'm in a class of 8 students. I have never gotten a better social studies education as in that class. It's difficult to emphasize just how amazing of an education you can get when it's that personalized. When you have 8 people in one class, the amount of dialogue, the amount of conversation, the amount of immersion you can have in any subject is beyond anything that we could have if we cut one teacher. All right, one teacher, how many classes is that? I'm aware that some of these social study teachers teach like 5 classes, five different courses throughout a year. Maybe some even more because they're semester classes. How are we going to make up for that? There's, like Declan said, there's going to be an increase of students taking all these different classes, and especially now, in a time where misinformation is so common, where every single corner of the political spectrum seems to be aimed at pushing the working class person down, where there is so much hate and where there is so much bigotry that has been so ingrained in politics. Why are we cutting social studies? I think it's a little ridiculous. And I just wanted to talk about there was $131,000 appropriated for security cameras and fences from the emergency reserve account. Why? Why do we need any of this? I don't think it's going to do any work at all preventing students from vandalizing the athletic complex. I don't think it's going to deter anybody from doing anything. If anything, it's just going to be a bigger challenge for students who want to make a name for themselves and who want to be annoying to the school. right? There's no good in doing this. It's ridiculous that you guys are taking $131,000 out of an emergency reserve account to pay for security cameras that will do virtually nothing for this school. I say that as a student, as somebody who knows what students want, as somebody who's talked with students who commit vandal crimes like this. It's not going to work. And I'd like to talk about the classes being cut. First of all, if you're cutting makerspace, why are you replacing it with theater? Why are you replacing this class at all if you're just going to cut it? I did not like makerspace when I was a student in the 8th grade. Maybe that's because I didn't like the curriculum. Maybe that's because I didn't like the teacher. I don't think it's a useless class. I think it has high potential to be an extremely useful class. So if you're cutting it, why are you replacing it with theater at all, especially theater? I love the theater program as much as anyone here. I went to see Shrek on Friday, and that play holds a very, very special place in my heart. So why are we replacing it with the theater program that I think a majority of students won't want to do? As much as I think it's great that we're promoting theater, I think we have to come to terms with the fact that a lot of people don't want to put themselves out there using theater. I think more or less it's just going to be another class where a lot of students sit around while 1 or 2 students who would have already joined theater will simply have a lot of fun learning about theater. I don't think it's going to do any good for anybody who genuinely wants to join theater. And I'm hearing so many more cut classes. AP Chemistry? AP Chemistry was one of the most important classes that I took last year, and I'm hearing about it being cut. It wasn't in this budget. I'm not sure if it's still happening, but I'd like to ask about it's not being cut anymore. Thank God.
It was never.
Thank God. It's ridiculous that we're cutting teachers and that we're cutting the classes at all. These social studies teacher holds such an importance to our school, especially now. Especially now, we're more than ever, we need to learn about the political system that we live in, where voting is more important than ever, where civic engagement is more important than ever. Why are we cutting the social securities department? For what, athletics? I'd like to ask, what was wrong with Mr. Gervin as the athletics director? What was wrong with that? He was a great teacher, and I've never heard a single complaint from any student athlete about him being an athletics director. And now we have Mortalara. I don't even know how much money we pay him, $100,000. The other day, I received a text from my friend, and I thought it was so absurd. It was a text asking me for money. It was a fundraising text asking me for money. I learned that they had an entire workshop for this, sending me a link asking me for money. It's absurd that this is what our sports system has come to, and that we're still spending money on it. Highland Park ranks among some of the lowest places in a lot of sports rankings, and throwing money at this sports program is not going to change that. Hiring a specialized athletic director is not going to change that. It doesn't matter how much money you throw at this system. The truth is, in many ways, Highland Park is simply too small for us to compete with other schools who have a drawing pool, a much, much larger drawing pool of athletes. And we do have some amazing athletes, right? I'm not going to deny that. But it's ridiculous that we are still increasing the money we are spending on the athletics program when we're cutting an entire social studies teacher. I would beg all of you to please do not accept this budget, to stop having so many cuts. I can guarantee you my parents would be more than happy to see a larger tax increase if it meant I and other students got a better education. I don't understand why we're raising taxes by 2% just to end up cutting an entire social studies teacher. It's absurd, and I'm extremely frustrated with the actions and the budget that's being proposed.
Thank you.
Hello. So I really want to address the extra spending on security. I was in the middle school last year, and a lot of the time when I was walking around, I saw multiple cameras in the same corner, just watching the same thing. I just looked around and it felt like we were wasting so many security cameras in single spots. And I feel like getting more security cameras just to place them in badly placed locations is not the way to do it, especially because I don't think we need extra spending on security cameras in general. I don't think we need more security cameras. And one thing I'm really angry about is the cutting of the Makerspace program. I know a lot of people talked about this, and I'm sure you guys are tired of it already, but it's so important to me because Makerspace was one of the classes that I really loved, which doesn't seem to be a popular idea, but yeah, Makerspace was an amazing class for me. Up there, it says, as owls in the school, we are known for making wise decisions, for being brave upstairs, for being inclusive and supportive of everyone. And Makerspace is what helps our students know to do that in life. And for grown adults who have already learned to do that, it might seem like something that's obvious that people should already know how to do. But for developing children, it's not something that they already know how to do. It's something that they need to learn through a developed class such as Makerspace. When I was in the middle school last year, I personally did not like the idea of theater. It seemed like a really boring class. Like Joseph before me had mentioned, not necessarily boring, but just a class where some people are going to do nothing, and then other people are going to have a lot of fun. And yeah, I agree with that. I know a lot of people who definitely would not like definitely not like theater, and it would just be a class where they go to do absolutely nothing. Whereas in Makerspace, even if they are not putting in a lot of effort, they're still taking the information that's important for the rest of their life. Theater is such a very not what's the opposite of broad, right? Narrow, a very narrow focused class. It's not something you're going to apply to every field of your life. Whereas Makerspace is something that you're going to see in every part of your life for every single year of it. And that is super important to our lives. If you look at what is taught in Makerspace and look at each day of your life, you're going to see how it is applied every second of it. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Aton Duncan. I'm a Highland Park high schooler. And I'll start and end with the same first sentence, and that is, this budget should have no cuts. I'm not a taxpayer, that's what my father and mother do, but something that interests me is that the tentative budget had a 5% tax increase, yet this one has a 3%. And, I'm no expert when it comes to economics, but, as a blue area and as a Democratic area, I thought that we'd be a lot more, accepting of a tax increase. It seems absurd to me that we're trying to cut or decrease the amount of taxes that we're increasing to get rid of social programs and benefit our school. A second thing I'd like to address is, you guys hid this pretty well. It took me a while to find this, but using the general fund to pay for the security cameras and the increased fencing at the Highland Park High School and Middle School to secure the athletic complex. It wasn't exactly on the table, so I had to look down. And I think $131,690 is a bit absurd when it comes to installing more security cameras and fencing. I know we preach about increasing education. I don't really see the educational worth to increasing security cameras and securing the athletic complex. I'm an athlete. That complex is barely secured because it's open up to the entire public anyways. The front gate is always open. Why? And so everyone comes in and they, quote unquote, ruin the turf. But that's not going to change with increased fencing. I know in last year's budget, the main concern was renovations for Bartles. We don't have that anymore. And looking to see that our tentative budget has actually been reduced, and we have a $113,000 more money that we're getting instead of the tentative budget is actually surprising. You know, we talk about these troubling times. In these troubling times, we should be using all the money. And something that, you know, really irritates me when I study economics and how politics influence economics is this idea of preventative budgeting, where we prevent or we decrease our budget in likes of something in the future happening. These are troubling times. I agree. There's a governor that's being, we have the Trump, you know, as our president, and he's definitely cutting a lot of money to the education department. And that's why we should be using all the money to our disposal. I think saving money for something that has not actually even been confirmed yet is a little ludicrous when we're talking about cutting valuable programs. And I'll get to that. I think something we haven't considered is maybe they will have the same courses. Heck, maybe there won't be an overflooding of students into these courses, even though I 100% think there will be. Something we have to consider is these teachers, they advise clubs. Let's say we get rid of the middle school teacher and we bring down someone from the high school, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is what's going to happen. We're taking that high school teacher and now they can't run their clubs, or at least it's 10 times harder to when they're down in the middle school. I know Joseph here is the president and actually the founder of a club that one of our social studies teacher teaches. And if he's brought down, that is a great concern to him. I think that's a great concern to all the clubs, because the impact of a teacher isn't just the class they teach, it's how they are in the hallways, what they do out of school, what they do for clubs. I think that is something that we have to think about when it comes to our education. And finally, something I want to address that I actually, I chuckled a little when we were talking about, which is the repairs to the HSS, the high school cupola. And, I know the 100th year of Highland Park, the high school building, is coming up, but $214,500 is a bit absurd. That thing's been up there for 100 years. I think it can use a couple more years without having the gutters be on the outside. And that money could be better well spent into making sure that we're not cutting. So I'll say it again. This budget should not have any cuts. Thank you.
Sorry, a little short. My name is Lisa Miller, South 8th Avenue. I was not going to speak, but I decided to lend some support to the kids and the parents. And I have to say that I've been disheartened by seeing the budget, and I was pretty disheartened when you hired an athletic director for a lot of money. My kids are not athletes. Well, one is, she's a swimmer, which I've been fighting to get a swim team, doesn't happen. And I feel so strongly that we're this small school. Why aren't we putting our focus on academics? When you have a child that's going into college and you're looking at all the other kids that this child is going to be competing against, it becomes alarming that our school doesn't have a lot of the same things that the other kids have. So now she's at the bottom trying to fight and show this is why I belong at this school. And you're cutting things and you keep cutting things. You say that there's going to be no impact if you take a social studies teacher, who, by the way, my son had. And Dr. Seska knew my son very well, as did a couple other people here. He was not a student. It was him and school did not get along. But Mr. Gervin really believed in him. And to take that away, really, really upsets me. Even though I'm going to have no skin in this game in a couple of years when my kids are out completely. But to take that away, you're saying there's going to be no impact. There was an impact when you did that for Mandarin. And now I have a student that's struggling in Spanish because she's been taking Mandarin for so many years. She suddenly had to learn a new language. And when you're dyslexic, it doesn't help. And now she's falling behind because there's no Mandarin, a language that she's been learning for so long. Not only that, it impacts my soon-to-be senior, weird to say, because she only has 2 years of a language. There was no, hey, here you go, we'll give you this Mandarin class online for free to help you guys out. None of that. She wanted to switch to ASL, and you know who's gonna have to pay for that? Me, because you guys only have Spanish. And I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but you have 2 Spanish teachers and you have, that's it. That's the only language. Three, I don't even know how many you have. But it's really, really, really frustrating, again, when you're looking to go to a college and you have other kids that have been able to take 3-4 years of a language, but my kid cannot. And then if I'm wrong, I don't know, but I hear that you're only gonna have 1 nurse for both the high school and the middle school. No, okay, good, thank God, because that would have been crazy. But my point is, I am a taxpayer. I don't make a lot of money, that's no secret, but I'm willing, so willing to have that tax go up just so that we could support our kids. Because I'm thinking about the future, I'm thinking about what happens when my kids are in college. Like, can they even get into college with the classes that they have? And he's right, 30 kids in an AP class is psychotic. That's the other thing that I wanted to say really quick. When you allow just anyone and everyone to take certain classes and you're not understanding that some kids don't belong in AP, some kids don't belong in honors, but you're pushing them into these classes, you're creating these big classes and you don't have extra teachers because wait a second, they now have to go to the middle school. And I'm gonna close with this. They're absolutely right. There are advisors that are, these teachers, a lot of them are like, they do so much for us. And it sickens me to see an athletic director make so much money, but these teachers are gonna get cut and nobody wants to get laid off. I can tell you firsthand that being laid off sucks. It means you are fired. And then you have to try to find a job. And in this economy, you can't find a job. How are you gonna go to Edison if they're cutting everybody? We could keep everyone. I would love to see some of these salaries cut, but I don't have a say in that. But I just want you to understand that if you take away, especially the social studies teacher, you're taking away something else from these kids. That's all I have to say, but thank you.
So I know I kind of came up here earlier and said I appreciate you guys trying to find this middle ground, but I think it's also pretty clear that nobody wants this middle ground. And as somebody who every day gets to hike up 3 things of stairs to get to the orchestra room because I'm in the high school and I play a violin, I think it's incredibly important that as I walk down those halls and I peer into the different classrooms, I see the personality of the teacher that you're trying to lay off or fire. I mean, this man, you can tell he has a passion for teaching. I walk by his classroom and it's reminiscent of my own 8th grade years. And now I know I didn't have this man as my teacher, but I just know from my sister who took him and from the personality that juts out of the classroom, the life-size cutouts of old presidents that bring a flair to the classroom is something that is so fundamentally important to students. The past few years, as I've gone and done social study classes, I've had amazing teachers who have built this foundation of public speaking, of activism that couldn't have been acquired in any other way. And I think in a town such as Highland Park, it is incredibly important that we keep these programs. I think everybody here has stated that they want these programs to be kept and that it's important that these programs are kept. And as somebody who has taken the Mandarin program and who loses out on these 3 years I mean, for one of the clubs I take, it is a requirement that we have at least 3 years of a language. And so it's either I start over for a new language that I haven't taken since elementary school, or I enroll in an expensive class of a language I somewhat know. And I think just firsthand being able to see a teacher that stretched between 2 schools, it's unfair to the students, it's unfair to the teacher. I think taking teachers and moving them out of classes where it's fundamental for them to be is just awful to see. Social studies is important, makerspace is important, and language is important too. These are all fundamental things as to what build children, as to what make us who we are and who we can be. And I think just kind of to close up, we have to vote no on cutting this budget because it's pretty clear that everybody from the community doesn't want to see that happen. And while there was a middle line trying to be built, and I understand why it has to be built, and I understand why we do have to preserve money and why we have to do all this stuff, I think taking money away from things that don't actually impact the students is what matters. Like, we have this guy who is paid, I think, $100,000 in the athletics department. And it just feels, as a student level, as somebody who's not in these athletics and is in the other academic clubs, it's disheartening to see that we're taking money away from somebody who was doing a fine job before to put into something that historically we've been good at, but currently we might not be. And I appreciate all the different aspects that we have to this school, and I think taking away anything would hurt us. We don't have a lot. We're a small town. We're not Edison. So we need to keep what we have, and we need to make sure things aren't being slashed to keep an arbitrary number lower.
Hi, Fiona Stanu. I am a student at the middle school, and I think it is utterly ridiculous that we are cutting makerspace. I have a friend who is so into like coding, and he's in robotics. And when he found out about this whole thing, he was absolutely devastated. He was so upset, and he loves makerspace. And me personally, I'll admit, not my favorite class, but it just replacing it with theater. I'm a theater kid. I love theater so much, but I also think makerspace is like a big impact to the entire school. Like, this is what some students want to do in the future. This is what they want to do as when they're adults. They want to do makerspace. They want to do coding, and taking this away kind of takes away that spark in them that makes them want to do this. And I feel like some kids in my school, they don't like theater as much as some people do. They think it's boring, or they just think that it's not their cup of tea. But makerspace, some kids love makerspace, some kids love art, some kids love theater. But taking one of those things away is just not, it shouldn't happen, because like people need this. And I feel like people don't get the opportunity sometimes to be able to experience all of this, like all of these opportunities to do, and they need to figure out what they're going to do in life. And so, yeah.
Thank you, Fiona. And what we're going to do now is we're going to open up Zoom so that anyone who's on Zoom who'd like to speak can.
How many people are
on? Is there anyone with their hand raised who'd like to speak? Going once? No? Okay.
Hello. Yeah, it's me again. I'll talk about why I'm back up here. I appreciate Dr. Suska for taking notes, but I will say it doesn't feel like we're being heard right now. A lot of you are at least looking our way. Some of you aren't. Some of you are looking at your computers, and that's somewhat okay. But I will say it feels like you guys are judging us. I will try to get into your headspace a bit here. You're looking at us and you're saying, wow, these kids are sure passing it. And they seem to be talking with a lot of knowledge, but they just don't understand budgets. They don't understand how hard it is to curate a budget that makes sure that we have everything perfectly aligned. And to some extent, you're right. We don't know how to form a budget, but something we do know is the impact of education, because that's what we're currently living. We're currently living our education. And it's a bit disheartening to see that there's cuts to these educations. something that I want to reiterate is that Highland Park has not as much resources as other schools. There are other schools that have 5 languages. There are other schools that offer all the APs imaginable. There are other schools that offer even up to multivariable calculus that I know we've been trying to push for, but we don't have enough students for. And it's a bit disheartening to see that we want to cut more when we already have such a small pool of resources to even pull from. And I'll talk from my experience knowing and working with teachers. You know, my mom works at the Graduate School of Education, and I know how hard it is to find teachers. And I know how little there are out there. You know, the Graduate School of Education has had less and less teachers year after year after year. They've had to pay less. They've gotten less grants. The government is, you know, excuse my language, they're destroying them. I was going to say something worse. But you get what I mean. The government and what is happening to teachers is disheartening. And so cutting a teacher's job, cutting multiple jobs in an economy that has seen some of the lowest unemployment rates in centuries is a little disheartening to hear. I don't know a lot about budgets, but I will say my mom has been working through some budget problems of her own at the GSE. And something that she tries to prioritize is not cutting anything, but trying to take from stuff and take as much as given, because what is given to you by the state and what you have at your disposal should be used. And I'll bring it back up again. I don't think we should be saving. I don't think this preemptive saving is a good idea. I think we have $113,000 that could be spent to a social studies teacher, that could be spent to all the things that we're cutting. And I'll say one last thing that was brought to my attention. You know, my brother is a lot older than me. He's in college now, but he took French at the high school. And from what I hear, they promised that the Mandarin program would replace French and it'd bring us money. And now it's a little sad to see that we're cutting the Mandarin program, and now instead of having French or Mandarin, we just have Spanish, and we have neither. So it seems like something, you know, there's a miscommunication from the board and to us students, because whilst I'm not interested in France or really interested in Mandarin, that's an opportunity that students at this high school deserve to have, because we're a small school as it is. If we cut more resources, that already puts us at a disadvantage. I'm looking towards colleges. I'll be honest, I'm probably going to Rutgers because that's where my mom works. But I know there's a lot of kids who want to achieve further, who want to go into Ivies. And that opportunity is lost when we just cut stuff. So I hope you guys consider all this, and I hope you guys adjust the budget so that there isn't cuts. And if there aren't, you know, I guess we'll just keep coming back up here until you guys do.
Oh, I think I'm the last speaker tonight, so I apologize for extending your time here. But I just like to open with a little statement about why public schools exist, is because of socialist ideology. And as the founder of the Highland Park Socialist Club, I feel a need to quote Marx on this. From each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. We're not giving students this by cutting teachers. And I want to talk about Mr. Gervin again, because he's an extremely important teacher to me. I had him last year in US 1 honors. I have him now in AP Gov. And I just want to talk about, even now, as we're considering colleges, the importance of having a lot of teachers that can write recommendation letters for us. Right? What happens if a social studies teacher moves to the middle school and maybe resigns because they just don't want to be there, because they spend their entire life teaching high school, or so much of their life teaching high school, and they just don't want to work there anymore? This is a real concern that some of the social studies teachers have. And I think it's really ridiculous that we're even considering cutting this. And I know that point's been stressed a lot, but I just want to stress it again. You know, it's really sad that we're making so many cuts when we don't have to be. And frankly, I don't think these savings are going to do us any good. I want to make it a little bit of an extended analogy. In 1997, all of Asian economies collapsed because of the 1997 Asian financial crisis. And a large part of this was because their federal reserves, their savings, were not strong enough to protect them against the crisis. Do we think that this is going to help us when Trump eventually reduces our budget crisis? I don't think so. I don't think this is going to do any of us any good. I think if the sweeping budget cuts that Trump is proposing and that the federal government is going to instate are going to happen, that no matter how much we save, it's not going to cushion us from the crash that we are going to experience. We might as well spend it all, as much of it now, when we still have the chance, and give our students the best education that can be given to them. We might as well just take it all now and say, let's put it to somewhere useful, something that can help every single student, not just student athletes, but every single student, and let's put it there and let's make it work. So I'm asking again, I'm just gonna voice this as many of my peers have voiced, no cuts. My parents would rather have tax raises than they would have a lot of cuts. If I paid taxes, which I unfortunately don't, I think I would too, to be able to have a better education for children. I think every single parent would rather have a higher tax, not a tax decrease, if it just meant that their student was able to get the education that they deserve and be able to go to the college that they deserve. And frankly, with these cuts, it's just not going to happen.
I wasn't going to speak again. Rob Scott, 25 South 2nd, Highland Park. But you've heard from students, right? You've heard from the Highland Park Socialist Club. You've heard Marx quoted, right? You've heard at the last meeting, members of the community say, no cuts, raise our taxes. You've heard more math and better math from students who use that key phrase, preventative budgeting. Yeah, he knows what it's about, this theatrical thing about how we have to save it for later, right? This sounds like Rutgers and their 5% mandated profit. The next thing we're going to hear in 3 years after this is over is the board will be talking more and more like they're a hedge fund, like Rutgers does. The thing is, in our society, so we can have a society, so we can have good things, and makerspace is a good thing, and theater is a good thing, and arts are a good thing, and learning social studies is a good thing. We pay taxes to pay people so they can grow and support our community, so they can support the students who you've heard speaking here today. You should listen to them, and if you don't, you should feel shame. And there's one other little thing that I wanted to mention. I keep forgetting to mention it. It's these quote unquote security cameras, which that's a misnomer. They're surveillance cameras, right? And you heard students talking about how, yeah, those cameras make them feel really uncomfortable. I cannot imagine what my high school would have been like if there were surveillance cameras in the halls. And now we learn that the money, we learned this today, it's not for new cameras, it's to update the server. It sounds like so we can store the data longer. That's creepy, right? Do we want that? Is that true? And so finally, I think I know what's going to happen. It's going to be a 9-0 or an 8-1 vote in favor of this because the decision was already made, as it always has been, as the decision was made to cut French and bring in Mandarin, which was going to solve all our problems. And we now hear that Mandarin is going away. That's what's going to happen. So here we are inflicting our words on you. At the very least, before that vote happens, we need to know exactly how much money it would take to keep Makerspace. How much money would it take to keep Secretary 1, Secretary 2, and the social studies teacher, right? We have not heard that, not in March, not 2 weeks ago, and not today. We heard a lot about the process. We heard the word data a lot. We didn't get a lot of data actually presented. We heard it was a hard process. We heard about Edison. We heard about how everything's terrible and everything's going to get worse, but we don't know how it's going to get worse, okay? A lot of that panic, but we didn't hear how much does Makerspace cost? What does it take to pay for it? What will it take to pay for the social studies? teacher? What will it take to preserve the work that is being done by those two secretaries that the superintendent has decided we don't need or we should cut? All right, and I'll stop. I won't go on any longer. If there's anyone on Zoom, I hope they chime in. Thank you very much.
Hi, Andy Zappo again, still on Johnson Street. I think the board should very much clarify something that seems to have become present in this meeting. I believe what happened, and I hope you guys can clarify this, is during the budget presentation, the name Mr. Gervin was mentioned. And it seems that that now has created a narrative that he's the gentleman who's going to be leaving as the secondary social study teacher. I hope that's not the case. If it is, I would find that particularly problematic because that would validate the long-term requirement for an overpaid administrator at the athletic level, because you'd be removing the one person who could fill that gap for a stipend on their salary and would probably still love to the job. I can't speak for him, but he was exceptionally good at it. So I just want to make sure that narrative that got embedded by his name being mentioned in the budget is not actually the person that's being let go. So that's for you guys to clarify when the chance comes for me to sit down and you guys to talk. Thank you.
Okay, did you say there was someone on Zoom? Okay, Abby, you can go ahead.
Hi, Abby Stern Cardinal. I'm on Harper Street. Just wanted to say a couple brief things. I was very impressed with the former speakers and especially the students. I know everyone else must have been. I hope everybody heard what all the students were saying. I agree that we didn't hear anyone at the past meeting or this meeting asking for less taxes. If anything, at least we could have stayed at the 4.14 that was in the tentative budget. I heard people even saying that they'd be willing to pay more than that, myself included, despite some, personal budget challenges. I think a lot of us recognize the importance. I know that we could be told that we didn't hear from everyone and we're only hearing from a small subset, but we do have the emails that were sent to the board published, and I don't think that any of those, while I can't read the emails from the subject, don't seem to be specifically asking for us to have less taxes based on the tentative budget. So I'm pretty disappointed to see that we're prioritizing lowering that versus at least keeping it to what the tentative budget was, even when people were willing to say that they would pay more. The question I have, and I would love to hear about this before the vote if possible, is about the process of these public hearings. I'm really hoping that these public hearings aren't for show and that changes can still be made. I believe that's the point of a public hearing. I know there may be a state imposed deadline, and I know we've heard about deadlines, especially with the tentative budget. I know there is one. I'm not sure what there is. But I really am hoping that this public hearing can mean something and that there can be some dialogue afterward, especially about what the students said and what we're hearing, and that we're not told that there isn't an option to vote no. I believe it's just going to be a yes or a no. Perhaps you can table it and have more discussion. Again, I recognize there are deadlines, but I hope that we can find a way to not just have the option be vote yes or we don't hit a deadline that the state imposes. I hope that we can find some way to, even if we have to make a decision, have a way to further conversation. So I appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Abby. Well, with that, we're going to close public comment and move on to the budget action items, which is that I move that the formal adoption of the 2026-2027 school district budget.
Second.
Dr. Beatty.
Do we, I'm thinking about Robert Rules of Order. After a motion's made, usually we can actually open it for discussion, even though I don't think we typically do that. Yeah, and just some clarification, if you like. Clarifying, Mr. Gervin is not, position is not being cut.
Oh, so unfortunately, I can't speak to specific personnel, but I will say that how cuts are determined are non-tenured staff are usually in that type of situation cut first, and then according to the certificate, and then tenured it's by seniority. Mr. Gervin does not fall into that category, but other than that, I can't speak to other personnel matters.
I was just asking that because something we said was interpreted in a particular way.
Yes, correct.
Right.
Correct. Yep.
I think the other piece too is that a lot was made about the athletics budget. Really what was done was athletics was being covered by multiple people. That money is now paid for an athletics director, which has allowed some of those people to go back to their full teaching, which has actually changed the course load in terms of social studies and some of those kind of situations.
Correct. And the money used we spend money on athletic trainers for events. So the position combined that together. So for a nominal expense, we were able to combine positions for that. The increase that you see this year is actually a result of the uniforms, because we discovered that for a bunch of different reasons that our student athletes were getting dinged for things. We were getting carded, some sort of colored card, I'm not familiar, but for violations when students are sharing the same number on their uniform, when they're mismatched, we get violations for that, and that has been impacting the department. Additionally, we have several student athletes that are unable to participate because we don't have sizes for them. So it's things have been mismatched. We also found that some of our student athletes had certain, there was a lot that was uncovered. So we have a couple of year phase-in plan to be able to provide new uniforms, but that's over a couple of years to minimize the impact on the budget. So the increase that you actually see this year is not a result of an additional administrator. The increase that you see is actually because we're trying to phase in over a couple of years some new uniforms for our student athletes.
And then the last couple of points, I just wanted for clarification, is money that's being used for the fencing, the servers, is actually earmarked because it's coming out of the emergency reserve. We can't use that to cover staff in the district.
No, emergency reserve, all the reserve accounts,
Right.
capital.
Same with capital reserve,
Yeah.
right?
Emergency
It looks like we're
account.
spending less, but actually we're drawing less on reserve, which is a
Correct.
very different thing. That has to be used for capital. Emergency has to be used for very specific things. So it's not an either or. We're doing cameras or preserving a secretary.
Correct.
Okay.
Your vote, Dr. Beatty? Oh, anybody else want a discussion before we do full votes?
Short, I truly need short remarks. Would now be a perfect time or before my vote, which would be the better? Hello, that's better. Should I have some brief remarks? Would now be a good time or before my vote? Like, would you rather?
Remarks or questions? It's discussion. I open it up for discussion. Would you like to discuss something?
I would like to discuss something. Okay. I'm really always been proud to live in Highland Park. Very proud to live in a community where everyone comes to meetings, speak their minds. I think I'm really blown away by the eloquence and the passion of our students. And it's because I respect so much what everyone had to say in this meeting that I want to briefly explain my thinking on this vote. And what it comes down to is this: as a democratically elected board, we have to think about everyone's concerns. So you personally may not think an athletic director or proper uniforms are the best use of funds. But other people are very glad to have a professionally run program and a full-time director. You may think social studies is the most important subject in school. Other people might think it's math or ELA or languages, and these subjects may be more impacted if a teacher were cut. You may think it's ridiculous not to raise taxes as much as we possibly can, but other people are very worried about rising costs and they may not be able to attend 2 board meetings. You may think security cameras or servers are a terrible idea and a wasteful and offensive use of money. But other people are worried about dangers to students in the country we live in today and are glad for the extra security. I personally think we should not cut a social studies teacher. And for all the reasons that have been talked about, I would support personally a tax levy more along the lines of the tentative budget we had, about 4.1%. But I talk with my colleagues on this board a lot in the past 2 weeks, texts, phone calls, emails, and I talk to people in the community too. I may not agree with everything everyone said to me, but I think this budget is a fair compromise. In large part because of the concerns that were expressed at the last meeting, because of your concerns, when you came to the meeting last time and said, the following changes have been made. Our social studies course offerings won't change. We will have the same number of nurses tomorrow as we do today. We'll have the same number of interventionists. We'll have the same number of media specialists. We're losing 2 secretaries, which is something that everyone is very sorry about, but we're not losing 4. And we're raising taxes, but not as much as originally proposed. So I'm going to vote for this budget, not as a robot, and maybe not enthusiastically, but with a clear conscience. I don't love every part of it, but the process was democratic, fair, and civil. And I truly believe the outcome of that process, this budget, is faithful to the Board of Education's academic goals.
Thank you. Any other comments or discussion? Sorry, discussion from the board.
Am I allowed to speak as well, or?
Sure, Mommy, go ahead.
I just want to say, like, with your point, who are these other people that you're mentioning? Like, I think, like all of our other students said, as similar to what the other students said, what matters a lot and should be taken into priority is our students. And I know from being very involved in many of the clubs in my school and also student congress that a lot of people have the same opinions as those who spoke today. And I think that's what we really should be taking into priority. And even though what you mentioned does make sense, I think there's other ways that we could all go about this, and it doesn't have to be just this one way. So I just wanted to talk about that.
Thank you. Okay, so we will move on to the vote.
Dr. Beatty.
This is a really hard decision. I am I'm going to go with everyone we've heard in the community. I know there's some people who probably would disagree with raising the taxes the full amount. We haven't heard from them, but I know they're out there. There are also a lot of people here who would be okay raising taxes and aren't speaking. And so I'm going to vote no.
Ms. Cassell-Dunn.
Yes.
Dr. Coleman.
I'm going to vote no on this budget. Along the lines of what my colleague Dan Beatty has said here, I, as a taxpayer struggling like many other households, would rather see us do what we need to do to not eliminate positions. Particularly, I'm concerned about the secretaries who are front-facing, not just bodies doing administrative work, but they're literally people who have relationships with students and staff and buildings. And there's a cultural piece there too with the particular staff members that we have. So in good conscience, just as the Equity and Excellence Chair, I can't really vote for that sort of cut to essential staff in our buildings. I'm also thinking about taking into account what we're hearing here from our students and families and staff previous meetings. I had hoped that what we would have received, and believe me, I understand and appreciate all of the efforts that Dr. Suska, you have put in, all of our staff, all of our leadership team has put in to really try to balance a budget to find this middle ground. There is no happy middle ground in this. There is no happy middle ground in this process, unfortunately, but I do understand your efforts to find a middle ground. I just think, for me, I was already having concerns about not getting questions answered between last meeting and this meeting. Why couldn't we see another scenario that did not have any cuts at all? I know I personally had asked for that and wanted that to you. I think, Anne, we texted, I'm like, that's one thing that I wish we would have received as a board. And maybe that's just my own lone opinion. But that would have made me without. So I'm sorry if I didn't see that. Okay, I'm sorry. And it's okay, so scratch that. It was there. And I guess again, I'm just maybe not lone, but I would be all for going for a scenario that did not have cuts and did bring us back to that initial tax rate. So no.
Mr. Maldonado.
I'm not going to pretend that losing some of these positions and programs and people is not going to be a loss. Right? There's no way to sugarcoat that. But I'm also cognizant of the fact that we are talking about a school district where something over 50% of our students qualify for free and reduced lunch. So we're raising taxes, but I wanted to keep that within a reasonable range. So I'm going to vote yes.
Dr. Pixley.
Yes.
Ms. Prus.
I am voting yes as well. I also have concerns about raising taxes beyond what we are. For exactly what was just said is that our community, many people in our community are living below a salary that can support them, and I don't want to increase costs to those people. I think we've come up with a fair middle ground here. I do thank all the students. I really do appreciate you're very articulate. And we are listening. We are hearing you and we are listening, as well as our other speakers, but to speak directly to the students. Thank you. I'm voting yes.
Dr. Schoolman.
Had we decided to keep a nurse in the middle school, I'm glad we have keeping a Bartle interventionist. I'm glad we're keeping a media specialist. I'm very confident about a yes vote. I vote yes.
Ms. Stanio.
So I just want to say I appreciate everybody coming and speaking and your enthusiasm to raise taxes as high as we can. However, not everybody in this community, our neighbors, are not that financially privileged to say that they can easily be okay with that and still survive day to day. I don't want to have to cut anybody. It's never fun, especially when we know some of these people, our kids go to these schools. It's a very difficult thing to have to do. But there has to be some kind of balance here. We do have to keep our finances safe as well, or we're going to fall into this problem every single year. And for that, I do have to vote yes.
Ms. Fartman.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Motion carries.
So with that, we're going to move on to regular board committee reports. So,
and did you say there was
Dan?
going to be a second public comment that wasn't budget wise?
There's a second public comment after committee reports.
I know, but we have to follow our.
Yeah, it's after committee reports.
For curriculum instruction, we met on April 16th. We talked about the math curriculum adoption. There were 4 curricula being piloted. The implementation of those has now been completed. In addition to gathering teacher feedback and student feedback, we are still gathering parental and guardian feedback. So we do not have a final decision. It looks like we have kind of 2 front runners, but to not influence kind of that last gathering the data, we're not going to discuss that at this point. But it looks like we have 2 really promising possibilities, and depending on kind of how the final feedback and analysis on that, we will be making a choice moving forward. I believe there will be a presentation in May at the board meeting on that, sharing some of the data and the decision to be made. So look for that next month. But there is a lot of data to be shared on that, and that's being gathered. We also have field trips. There'll be a field trip to the municipal building for 5th grade. Cheerleaders are going to Bartle for a pep rally for testing. 5th graders are going to choir at the middle school and high school to connect them with those programs. And then will be a dress rehearsal for Bartle Spring concert. The other item we discussed was technology use, particularly Chromebook use, both in school and out of school. And we are sort of gathering what data we can look at and what is manageable. There is a lot of data, and a lot of it is collected through LineWise, which is a software that tracks user data and blocks and filters websites that are being used. So we are figuring out what data we can gather and then what questions we want answered. We know some parents have expressed concerns about Chromebook use and technology use in the schools. There's a lot of data, and we're trying to figure out how to look at it in a useful, meaningful, kind of manageable way. Yeah. Okay. Items for voting. So we have approval of the field trips, approval of job description for maintenance specialist, approval of the Highland Park School professional development plan, approval of home instruction for 4 students, approval of the spring school bus emergency evacuation report, approval of the university student interns, approval of CPR, AED, first aid training for a number of staff. And that's it. Any questions?
Monique?
I do not have an update. We did not meet this month. We will be meeting soon.
Okay.
All right, Finance and Facilities met twice over the last few weeks. We met April 14th, in which we debriefed about the April 13th meeting while it was fresh in our minds, and discussed the feedback from the meeting, and discussed some potential changes based on that feedback, and on board feedback as well. We discussed some action items for facilities. We're approving the master plan proposal from Spitzel and that's embedded in the 26-27 budget. We will begin this master plan assessment as soon as this is approved. This is again like a study of the space that we have and the capacity that we have. We do have pre-K class, not pre-K. Pre-K is in the building. We have some classes at Irving in those modulars, and we can't keep them forever. So we need to do a space assessment, to make sure to see how we can accommodate more students, especially as our, town continues to be developed. We also have the job description for a maintenance specialist. This is for a current job. There was never a job description for this position. So when we had approved a similar job description for the role last month or the month before, the union was like, hey, why don't we get one for this on the books too? So that's where that maintenance specialist position comes from. It's not a job that's open. We have it. It's just describing the duties. We also discussed the Champions program. So Champions will collapse the middle school program next year. Right now, there's only 1 student. The district offered a paraprofessional to walk that student to Bartle for the remainder of this year. So to be kind of like a counselor in training and do some activities over there. We had discussed, is there a need for a middle school after school program? Considering, we have the CAVE program, and the CAVE program is also closing. However, I did reach out to Nikki Gonzalez over at, who is my neighbor, and she said some days there were no students there, and some days there were maybe 5 or 8 students there. So between that current enrollment and only one parent interested in enrollment so far for next year, we support the decision to close the middle school portion of Champions. Some facility projects updates. The Batesville field is waiting on an updated quote from the landscaper, and a sign is also on order. The Bartle structural repair continues moving along. They're making good progress. They are doing some last minute things at the Bartle toilet room. So hopefully those kids will get to use it before they, 5th grade will get to use it before they graduate. Pre-K classroom renovations, a door will be installed in that cafeteria area so that workers can enter directly into the construction zone rather than having to go through the whole school. We are still waiting for updated quotes for the HPEF Environmental Sustainability Project grant. There was a discovery of a leak in the geothermal field at Irving. This is not as serious as it sounds. There's no volcanoes or anything. So there's a leak in one of the geothermal pipes near the modulars. The pipe is part of the heating and cooling system of Irving. This requires the removal of the fence near those modulars and excavation. Our facilities director is hopeful that the leak can be found easily, accessed, and repaired. If they cannot find the leak, then they are going to have to cap the pipe. And once the modulars are gone, eventually, they can go in and repair that pipe. The system that they have will be able to manage on the 5 remaining pipes. So it's just a matter of, does it need to be capped now because we can't really locate it yet, or can we locate it and fix it? And we've also submitted an insurance claim for that. And then update on school lunch debt. As of April 6th, we were at $52,387.70. For our facilities, oh, hold on, a lot of pages behind. For our facilities action items on the agenda, we have the approval of the bill list, the approval of the treasurer's report, board secretary report, Board of Ed certifications, budget transfers, approval of travel and related expense reimbursements. We have approval of some contractors for professional services and related services. To highlight some, we have some CPR AED training for 31 staff members, which is awesome. Middle School Diversity Day performance, Leaders to Leaders mentor for Dr. Donovan. We have Joel Waldman, who is a class member from 1987. Who's a Holocaust survivor, coming to speak. We have mindfulness for Middle School Diversity and Wellness Day, Tai Chi, Zumba, more mindfulness, more Tai Chi, beading for Wellness Day as well. We have introducing Chinese calligraphy. That's very cool. I'm jealous. Some psychotherapy and psychoeducational evaluation contracts, professional development and coaching on blended and personalized learning, and a presentation on unveiling the college admission process and boot camp, and that takes place in the summer. We also have the approval of bedside instruction for 4 students. We have an approval of out-of-district placements for 1 student. We have the approval for McKinney-Vento tuition contracts with South Plainfield School District for students, 4 students there. We have an approval for the agreement with the Borough of Highland Park for that revenue collected from 31 River Road urban renewal. And there's that document attached. The approval of the Highland Park Educational Foundation grants. Thank you so much. There's a grant for reading bench, drum circle equipment, Diversity and Wellness Day. So we're very excited for those grant funds and the support from the HPEF. Approval of that master plan assessment I mentioned. School-based youth contract. That's for our school-based youth services program for the 26-27 year. Renewal of our food service management contract for next year. right, there's a lot. And the approval of medical, prescription, and dental plans for next year as well. Are there any questions?
I thought you said drone circle equipment. I was
Drum.
I was alarmed.
Drum circle.
My question was, so the school lunch balance, my impression is it's kind of leveled off, like it's not rising as fast as it used to. Is that the case?
It seems to, oh, go ahead.
It actually decreased between March it actually decreased between March and April, about $3,000.
So we kind of hit 50 around, and then it's kind of
correct.
Should we, if we kind of have a more of a norm of paying it, should we consider at some point trying to zero it out, or just, otherwise it's going to hover around 50,000, and anyone who hears for the first time is going to panic?
So we are monitoring everything closely. The goal is to get everyone that could qualify for free and reduced lunch to apply. Once we get them approved, that is something that I would bring to finance and facilities for consideration.
I have a question about my own agenda item. Can you go into the agreement with the Borough of Highland Park? Can you just describe what that is at 31 River Road for the public?
That's the pilot share, so payment in lieu of taxes. That is an agreement about 3 years ago with the help of Ms. Bruce. The borough does pay the district a portion of the pilot share money that they receive for the redevelopment of 31 River Road.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The only agenda item you missed was a thank you, just to say thank you to the Highland Park athletic teams for their donation for the
I'm so
baseball
sorry.
field.
Number 13.
Yeah, over $7,000 to help us finish up the baseball field.
Yes, acceptance of the donation of Highland Park Baseball Field. Of course, yes, we are really grateful for that as well. I apologize for missing it. It's all the way at the bottom. Did not look like its own item.
Okay, so for personnel, we have the approvals of the reduction in force as outlined in the budget. We have approvals of non-renewals. We have approvals of reappointments for the next school year. Approval of payment for a medical leave. Approval of an updated settlement agreement. Approval of leaves of absences, approvals of resignations, 2 of which are for retirements, approval of appointments. And that's what we have for personnel. For policies and regulations, we have a number of policies on second reading. Employment of chief school administrator, resource materials, library materials, and the regulations for those resource materials and library materials. Okay, and now we move on to our second public comment of the night.
Hi, Fiona Stanio again, and this is my sister Lila. We wanted to address something that's been a problem in the middle school and the elementary school is the lack of pads and tampons in the school bathrooms. I've talked to my principal about this multiple times, but she has said, well, students can go to the nurse. Here's the problem with that. Sometimes students may be on the 3rd floor and may have to go to a bathroom like at that exact moment. They can't go all the way down to the nurse just to get a pad or a tampon. They have to go to the bathrooms, but there are no pad or tampon dispensers in the bathrooms. And not just the girl bathrooms, the boys bathrooms as well, because there are trans students in our schools. And also in the elementary school, not just the middle school, there are young girls who need tampons and pads because they might start their period early. And we really need this to be acknowledged because this has been a thing that I need some of my friends need and a bunch of people need in the school. And I feel like it hasn't been acknowledged. It hasn't been like seen that we need this in our school bathrooms. Because this is a essential thing that we need, because we're not gonna go from all the way to the third floor, all the way from the second floor, all the way down to the nurse, just go all the way back up again. And so that is something that I was gonna say needs to be acknowledged.
Do we have anyone on Zoom? Well, if anyone on Zoom would like to speak, please raise your hand. Going once? Okay, well then we are going to close the second public comment section and move on to board action items.
For curriculum instruction, I move items 1 through 7.
Dr. Beatty,
Yes.
Ms. Casalda,
Yes.
Dr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Maldonado,
Yes.
Dr. Pixley,
Yes.
Ms. Prus,
Yes.
Dr. Schoolman,
Yes.
Ms. Stanio,
Yes.
Ms. Bardman.
For finance and facilities, I move numbers 1 through 17.
Second.
Dr. Beatty,
Yes.
Ms. Casalda,
Yes.
Dr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Maldonado,
Yes.
Dr. Pixley,
Yes.
Ms. Prus,
Yes.
Dr. Schoolman,
Yes.
Ms. Stanio,
Yes.
Ms. Bardman.
Yes. Okay, for personnel, I move agenda items 1 through 14.
Second.
Dr. Beatty,
Yes.
Ms. Casalda,
Yes.
Dr. Coleman,
I guess I have a question. Should I be voting, if I voted no on the budget, would I be voting no on the reduction in force? That's on numbers
you.
1 through 4.
That's up to you.
It doesn't, okay, it's not, doesn't matter.
It's up to you.
Okay.
I can't tell you what to do. I can't tell you what to do other than it's up to you.
Okay. So yes.
Mr. Maldonado,
Yes.
Dr. Pixley,
Yes.
Ms. Prus,
Yes.
Dr. Schoolman,
Yes.
Ms. Stanio,
Yes.
Ms. Bardman.
Yes. Okay, and on policies and regulations, I move agenda items 1.
Second.
Dr. Beatty,
Yes.
Ms. Casalda,
Yes.
Dr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Maldonado,
Yes.
Dr. Pixley,
Yes.
Ms. Prus,
Yes.
Dr. Schoolman, Ms. Stanio,
Yes.
Ms. Bardman.
Okay, and now we move on to board liaison reports.
Okay. CPAG is having a meeting this Thursday, April 30th. 6 o'clock. It's actually, they're bringing in resources from the community. So this is a really good opportunity to attend and learn about some of the resources that we have here in Highland Park. There is going to be a presentation from Circle Care, which is the new service that opened in town for students that receive ABA therapy. And then I believe Ms. Coppola was also getting information from other resources as well that can be disseminated. So we really encourage folks to attend. There will be some light refreshments and childcare and translation in Spanish and Arabic.
And I forget what committee I'm on. I'm sorry. The Human Relations Commission. is having a DEI cookie exchange to show support for diversity, equity, and inclusion in a sweet way by bringing and exchanging cookies from all different cultures. There's going to be a moderator-led conversation about the community's feeling about DEI. And there's going to be activities for kids. Just go there. Oh, shoot. And I just deleted it. Sorry, it's been a long day. Right, I found it again. And that is on Sunday, May 17th, from 1 to 3 p.m. at the community center, the Highland Park Community Center. So I hope you all can make it. And it's free.
The Commission for Universal Access is interested in working with the district to sponsor a trip to We Rock the Spectrum. It seems like the age group that's probably going to fit is probably Irving, kind of K1. So the commission is in contact with our director of ed services to kind of discuss this possibility and plan for it probably for the fall. I don't think it can happen this year, but they are really looking forward to playing that and providing that for the district.
I have an update on the green team. Tracy Maiden, teacher here in second grade at Bartle, I was excited to share that the district as a whole has secured 190 points in the Sustainable Jersey for Schools program. That means the district now has, as a whole, bronze level status. So we did not have a status before, and now we have a status, which is bronze. Bartle, man, 165 points, has silver status. And Irving and the high school are still in the 2-digit category, and the middle school does not have any points. So middle school, you have your work cut out for you. But I think that's great, and I know that they have more work still to do.
For the Highland Park Education Foundation, they had their 80s fundraiser at Pino's a couple of weeks ago. I don't have a total of how much that brought in, but it was well attended. Several people on this dais were there and looking ridiculous, myself among them. It was fun. I won a very bad bottle of wine. I got the cheapest one.
If that's all for board liaison reports, we'll move on to the president's report, of which I do not have one. And then old business, new business.
Oh, I actually was just going to address the student's second public comment that we were aware through some of the discussion that came out actually at the April 13th board meeting. So I took some of that information because, as you see, I take copious notes, although contrary to popular belief, I actually do go back and take all the information and try to do some action items. So my apologies if I don't make them all public, but one of the things that we heard was about the use of feminine hygiene products. And so our director of facilities is going through all the bathrooms, and we're making sure that areas that were not attended to previously will be attended to with dispensaries for feminine hygiene products, and making sure that there at the high school. Dr. Donovan said that there were some students that used to frequently replenish it. They may have lapsed in doing that per se. It just kind of didn't go on the radar. So we're picking that back up and making sure, because we get a lot of donations around that. And I know at the high school, thank you to the students that continuously make sure that those are fully available. So based out of the previous discussions, I just wanted to make sure that we addressed it, that any area that is of concern will be addressed immediately.
I had the pleasure of participating in a global certificate program where Highland Park High School students actually went to the Graduate School of Education at Rutgers and presented some of their plans for projects around the community. I didn't exactly know what I was getting myself into. I thought I was just there to enjoy, but I actually had a role. And so I got to see a number of students present and receive feedback. They had partners who were students in our social studies teacher education program that helped them plan their projects and presentations. And so they got feedback from that and either got their kind of project approved to move forward, or minor revisions or major revisions. But it was just really a pleasure to see them present and see the kind of thought that they had gone into it. They had done some research and looked through different articles and to kind of make their case for what needed to happen. But it was a really phenomenal event to be a part of and to see our high school students and see the partnership between these future social studies teachers with our high school students kind of really move forward.
I have something as well. This is very early days, but I got appointed to the board of the Heldridge Center for Workforce Development at Rutgers. And one of the things, we had our annual board meeting for that last week. And one of the projects that they were discussing is they were working on creating some sort of project linking workforce out of magnet school, out of the STEM magnet school in Middlesex County to potential opportunities at the Helix that's being built in New Brunswick. Obviously, that's not quite operational yet. But I mentioned the possibility of trying to incorporate students from the district into that when it gets underway, and they were receptive to it. So there's interest. So I don't know when that will materialize or what will that look like, but there might be something to be had there. So
How many boards and authorities are you on?
too many.
I'd like to address the conversations that are being had around athletics in our community. I do think it would be very helpful if in the future we could be updated on how the program has grown and has leveraged its original strengths and has grown since then. You know, we've had wonderful presentations where we recognize student athletes, and that's been great. I don't think some members of the public understand the importance of student athletics when it comes to connectedness to schools and motivation and learning, quite frankly. And I'm not an athlete parent. Like I am, like my kids on one team, but like my kids were not athletic, like at all, right? And I would roll my eyes at the parents that like would go to soccer games every weekend, like and text me from the soccer fields, and it's like I'm so cold, and I'm like, you signed up for that, right? But there is clear evidence behind that relationship, and it is often a pathway to college for some students that may not get there otherwise, whose talents don't excel in ELA or math or STEM or whatever, right? So I think we need to be really careful about villainizing athletics and villainizing the people that support our athletics department. To me, it's really offensive. And I just want to, you know, maybe encourage some more information being brought forward to kind of combat some of those myths.
Alice, I think that's just spot on. I mean, I was not an athlete. It's going to be shocking to people either. But being in the district and making friends whose kids are more into sports and hearing from student athletes here and talking to teachers, and it's just, I just never knew, you know, how much of a happy student's identity and their feeling good about themselves came from participation in sports. Not from winning all the games, but from being part of a team and getting better. And that translates. And I think it'd be great if we could hear more about, well, we do hear a lot about it. We hear from students, we hear from coaches and the director, but I don't want any students listening, watching the Zoom, all 5 people who watched on YouTube. But if anyone does, I don't want any student who is into football or basketball or soccer or whatever to think that their excellence matters less than a student who is, super bookish or something like that. Like, you all matter, and everyone's talents matter the same to me. And I'm proud that we have an athletic director and a better program than we used to.
Comment on that because I'm totally in agreement with you. I was a student athlete, and it really does help students with their self-esteem, with their abilities to even concentrate in school, especially if they have ADHD and can't sit there all day. And it can be a career. There are plenty of students who want to go into coaching athletics or being a gym teacher or even working as a trainer, physical therapy. These are all people who are mostly are athletes. And to think that it's not as important as anything else is saying that a whole set of people are not important, and that's just not right.
Could I also make a comment? Yeah, I agree with everything that you guys mentioned. Oh, sorry. I would just also like to add on, like with how you said that sports is one way to get into college, so is like having the opportunities to get like involved and have good high level classes and all the sorts of stuff that school's supposed to offer. I know a lot of peers who haven't been able to get into their like dream school, like top schools, and it's really hard this year. But I feel like school athletics, whatever it is, like if we can make it more opportunities for students, it'll just make it so much easier for us to get to the schools that we want to get into. Yeah.
I forgot to say my actual a whole point is that if you don't have a robust sports or any kind of thing, if you didn't have robust AP classes, if you didn't have robust science, it's not going to grow. So if we invest with either financially or with time or just caring about it, those things will grow because they will be nurtured. So the students will have a lot more opportunities, and they're all equally as important.
Okay, well then, with that, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everyone.